Hi, friend. Welcome to Mindful Chatting. I want you to think about this for a second. Have you ever had one of those days where you can't really focus, you're kind of irritable, maybe overwhelmed, and just mentally scattered? And then hours later, you realize, oh, I haven't eaten. Or maybe you did eat, but it was coffee, sugar, or maybe something really quick, or maybe just random snacks all day. And by the afternoon, your brain completely crashes. A lot of people think nutrition is just about weight and fitness and appearance, but if you have ADHD, food directly impacts how your brain functions. So, today we're going to talk about protein and dopamine, blood sugar and focus, why skipping meals affects your emotional regulation, and realistic nutrition strategies that actually help support your ADHD brain. Let's get into this together.
Welcome to Mindful Chatting, a podcast where therapy meets real life. I'm Kristen, a therapist, business owner, and a lifelong student of what it means to fully show up in our relationships, in our work, and in our healing. Here, we unpack mental health concepts, explore mindfulness tools, and talk through the messy, beautiful, in-between moments that shape us. Whether you're a fellow clinician, a curious listener, or someone navigating your own growth, this space is for you. Let's chat.
One thing that I think people don't understand about ADHD brains and nutrition is that your brain uses a huge amount of energy, and ADHD brains already struggle with dopamine regulation. That is not something new. But dopamine impacts focus, motivation, this task initiation, our reward, and our emotional regulation strategy, which means how you fuel your brain really does matter, and more than most people realize. But let's talk about protein. So, protein contains amino acids, which help create those neurotransmitters, and neurotransmitters including dopamine. So, when you're under eating your protein, your brain has less support for dopamine production. It's already low to begin with. And then, if it doesn't have the building blocks to make more, well, that's just going to be a bad case. And that can show up as low motivation, low focus, mental fatigue, increased cravings, and really feeling off cognitively. And this is why some people feel dramatically better just from consistently eating protein earlier in the day.
If you're nodding along and thinking, yep, this is totally me, I want you to stop and take a free quiz. I have made a quiz about what's your ADHD struggle, and it'll only take a couple of minutes. And at the end, there's a secret freebie waiting for you that will help you start working on your struggle right away. Look in the show notes for the link.
All right, now let's talk about blood sugar crashes. This is one of the biggest hidden issues. A lot of ADHD people accidentally undereat all day, and then they overeat later in the day. So you rely on caffeine, sugar, and quick dopamine foods. But the problem is that your blood sugar instability affects your cognition. So when your blood sugar spikes and then it crashes, your brain will experience fatigue, irritability, difficulty focusing, and emotional dysregulation. And then people think, gosh, my ADHD is just awful today, when part of the issue is actually physiological. You just haven't been supplying it the appropriate nutrition that it needs in order to function effectively. So let's talk about skipping meals because this one matters a lot. If you've ever noticed yourself becoming more emotional, more reactive, or even more overwhelmed when you haven't eaten, that's not just moodiness. Your brain is struggling to regulate without fuel. And ADHD brains often forget to eat, ignore our hunger cues, hyper focus through meals, and rely on convenience. which creates nervous system instability. And so your brain and your body has no idea when it's going to eat next, which is not a good recipe to help your brain function appropriately. If you want to understand your ADHD in a deeper way, I've created the ADHD Crash Course, and it walks you through ADHD step by step so that you can actually start understanding your brain and not shaming it. Everything's in small, doable lessons designed for your ADHD in mind. The link is in the show notes. Now, this is really important because people with ADHD will shame themselves for this particular thing. Because ADHD impacts planning, grocery shopping, meal prepping, even remembering meals, and consistency. So, nutrition struggles are often more executive functioning deficits, not laziness, and not a lack of care for ourselves. And this is where people really get stuck. People will try to overhaul everything overnight. They understand that now they need to meal plan and they need to work on perfect eating throughout the day. And now we need to track everything. And then when they can't sustain it, they quit. And ADHD brains do better with simple, repeatable, and low friction systems. And today we're going to give you some tips and tricks on how to approach this in a more sustainable way. If you're listening to this and thinking, this is exactly what I struggle with, I want you to know that I built something specifically for you. The EF, or Executive Functioning Activation course, walks you through why task initiation feels so hard with your ADHD and how to actually get yourself moving without shame, pressure, or burnout. It's short, practical, and designed for ADHD brains, not productivity culture. If starting is your biggest barrier, this course gives you structure, language, and tools that actually work for you. You'll find the link in the show notes. Let's go over some realistic ADHD nutrition strategies. First, I want you to start prioritizing your protein first, not perfection throughout the day. Just how can I get more proteins consistently? And the best way to do this is to try to get a lot of your protein up front in the beginning of your day, which could look like maybe getting 30 to 40 grams of protein during breakfast and maybe that mid-morning snack. And then if you struggle throughout the day, well, you got a good chunk of your protein already set up to set you up for the rest of the day. And so if you struggle here and there throughout the rest of the day, it doesn't matter. You've gotten a lot of protein up front. There's also a lot more research out that if you are on medication for ADHD, it's actually more effective if you eat protein when you take your medication, which most people take their medication in the morning. So if you're taking your medication with more carb-heavy breakfast, it's probably not being as efficient as you should be. So if you load it up with protein while you're taking your medication, you're going to probably notice a bigger effect on your medication. Next, the best thing that we can do for ADHD brains is reduce this decision fatigue. So repeat meals if you need it, and simply do something that is sustainable. So when I think about meal prep, a lot of people want to meal prep the whole week at one time. You don't always necessarily need to do that to still be effective with meal prepping. You can always prep the night before by taking leftovers and using them as lunch the next day, or trying to maybe crack an egg over dinner last night for breakfast. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. You need to create less decisions. So if you already have stuff that you maybe have extra from leftover the night before, let's just think about how we can make it more breakfast worthy, or how can I make it more lunch worthy, instead of trying to create a whole new meal the night before or for the whole week. That is just not sustainable for everybody. And then this is the big one. I want you to eat before you're starving. And I know this one is a really hard one for me because once you crash, everything just becomes so much harder. And a lot of us will kind of ignore our hunger cues because let's face it, we're really interested or we're really in the zone. And getting out of that zone to eat is probably more damaging to our productivity to get out. But I want you to think long term. Yes, short term, that might be more damaging to your focus, but long term, you're going to crash. So think about little healthy snacks that are maybe more protein driven that you can just reach for and eat. And so it doesn't stop your productivity flow. Protein bars, protein shakes that are already made are a really good example of how you can load up on protein, but still eat throughout your day and not break up your productivity. Another thing is these easy foods. So things that require low effort because some days your capacity and your energy is going to be low, and that's okay. So maybe think of some staple meals that you can always have either pre-made or something that you can warm up for those low energy, low capacity days. So that it's something to where you're not going in and having that loaded decision fatigue when you're walking into the kitchen. Or you're just going out to eat and just choosing those comfort meals when maybe those aren't the most effective for your productivity and the protein you need to last you throughout the day. Lastly, I want you to stop thinking about food morally. This isn't about a good or bad choices, it's about supporting your brain. So instead of thinking about what's the most healthy option, I just want you to think about protein first. Because once you consistently get your protein in and you're doing it sustainably for about a month, then you can start adding on healthier choices. Because guess what? You're going to have the more energy to do so. You're going to be more regulated because you've been feeding your brain.
Okay, quick pause. Because you've ever found yourself rewinding this episode like 3 times because your brain just drifted, this is for you. I hear this all the time. I can focus, just not when I actually need to. And that's exactly what the focus course is about. Because here's the truth. ADHD isn't a lack of attention, it's a regulation issue, which is why some days you're locked in for hours and other days you're rereading the same sentence wondering what just happened. So inside my executive functioning focus course, I break this down in a way that actually makes sense for you. We go through how your attention works in your brain, your specific focus patterns, why you get distracted externally and internally, and how to actually build a system that helps you stay on track and come back when you drift. Because the goal isn't perfect focus, it's knowing how to return without spiraling. So if you're tired of blaming yourself and you just want something that actually works with your brain, I'll link the focus course in the show notes. All right, let's get back to this episode.
One more thing before we end this episode. I want you to think of food not just as calories, but as information. And your brain responds to that information all day long. And it needs more input, more data in order for your brain to efficiently and effectively work with its environment. That's how I want you to think about food. And if nutrition feels really overwhelming for you and you have ADHD, I created a simple ADHD friendly nutrition support guide with easy protein ideas, low effort meal strategies, and ways to reduce that decision fatigue around food. I'll link that in the show notes if you want to grab it for free. I think a lot of people don't realize how much harder everything feels when their brain and body aren't supported with nutrition. And sometimes what looks like lack of motivation is actually underfueling, overwhelm, and cognitive depletion. Remember, you don't need perfect nutrition. You need support. And because when your brain has stable fuel, your focus improves, your emotional regulation improves, and life just feels way more manageable. Thank you for joining me, and be gentle with your mind this week.
One more thing before you go, and this helps me personally, staying present and grounded, which we all need, especially when your brain wants to spiral into disconnection. Me too. It's Brain FM. It's musically designed to help ADHD brains, well, really anyone's brain, focus, relax, or sleep, and I use it almost daily. If you want to try it, I've dropped my link in the show notes. And if you're looking for planning tools or ADHD-friendly resources, I'll keep a list of my favorite links in every episode.